right. Hello again. This is Foghorn with another installment of Flight School Academics for this, the 24th of October 2950, or 2020 if you're stuck in the past. This presentation is part of an ongoing series of academics for the members of the Aurora Republic, the premier role-playing organization and Star Citizen. If you are new to the Aurora Republic or visiting for the first time, let me start by saying welcome. We're glad to have you with us and would love to hear more from you if you'd like to hear more from us. We are a lawful good organization focused on role-play exploration and social interaction and are currently active in recruiting on Spectrum and Discord. First things first, we have a couple of new members since the last time we did one of these, which it was... So everybody say hello to our new folks, Bindat and Owen Druss. Owen Druss, who just joined today, which is fantastic. So welcome, guys or gals. And everybody make sure that you stop by, say hello, and make them feel welcome. So, Missiles and Countermeasures. This information is current as of Alpha 3.11. They have not implemented the missile operator mode, I think is what they were calling it, when it was on the roadmap. They have not implemented that yet, but they've done a lot of the prep work and tweaked a lot of how Missiles and Countermeasures work. So we're going to go with that, and hopefully that'll basically stay the way it is. So quick overview, what we're going to cover in this block of instruction is missile characteristics and deployment, and of course the onboard countermeasures, aka chaff and flare, types and deployment. So, and then of course I'll also show you the HUD symbology, and we'll finish off with a quickie little piecemeal vignette video showing you the HUD symbology in action that we captured earlier today very quickly, Olermir and I. So missiles, we'll go over the type, sizes, range, and use right now. So of course there's three guidance types, or I should say there's three types of missiles, broad categories of missiles categorized by their guidance technology that they use. So the first one is of course your electromagnetic, which is a seeker head that will follow the electromagnetic signature of your spacecraft. In other words, the radio frequencies and footprint that all of your systems put out. It's EFI basically. That's not electronic fuel injection. That's or EMI, excuse me, electromagnetic interference. So that we use the term Fox 1 when you're shooting them. Of the three types, the EM guided missiles have the slow, has sort of the middle of the ground of acquisition time, how long it takes them to quote unquote lock, than the infrared and the cross section. The infrared, obviously, which everybody's pretty familiar with, infrared is following. Now, this is a bit of a misnomer, because infrared is part of the electromagnetic spectrum. In my opinion, I believe electromagnetic should actually be termed RF for radio frequency, because that's actually what it follows, is aka radar. But the IR is actually part of the electromagnetic spectrum, but in Star Citizen we break those out because apparently they like to say that poodles are something different than dogs. But so the infrared seeker looks at the heat emissions in the IR portion of the electromagnetic spectrum and follows that. So the term for that for your if you're shooting a missile is Fox 2. Obviously, if that's the guidance for a torpedo that you're shooting, that's what bruiser is. So if you're shooting an electromagnetic guided torpedo, then that's a bruiser 1 is the call, not Fox. So if you're shooting 5, 7, or 9 size weapons, Fox is inappropriate. It's supposed to be bruiser. The IR guided systems has the fastest acquisition time of the three types. And then, of course, the slowest acquisition time is by the cross-section missiles, CS missiles, which are Fox 3 or Bruiser 3. Those actually are looking at, in real life, we would call that a pseudo-imaging IR is actually what we call it. The cross-section missiles where they don't just look out and go after heat. They're actually looking out and seeing the shape of your aerospace vehicle and memorizing that shape, aka its visual cross-section, and then it basically keeps that picture and just tries to make the picture bloom in its eyeball until it smacks it. So you can also see the symbology used in the HUD for those types of guidance, depending on whether it's what's on your bird or what's being shot at you. So of course the lightning bolt is for the electromagnetic, the flame is for IR, and then the like Wi-Fi signal is for the cross section seekers. They are blue if you're talking about the ones that are on your bird to shoot at other people, and they are red if it's something that's being shot at you, and I have demonstrations of that here in a moment. Okay, so the size and ranges, this is the new, really new stuff. They did a little bit of changing in the symbology and stuff on the HUD that actually makes it much more readable and much more intuitively understandable. But what's been tweaked in the size, and these numbers will get changed again, I'm sure. So I'm gonna talk to you less about the specific numbers and more sort of the trend and general idea of what's happening here. So size 1, 2, 3, and 4 are considered missiles. 5, 7, and 9 are considered torpedoes. That's why you have Fox and Bruiser as appropriate. Something to when you're looking over here at the damage numbers, and these are ranges, so we'll actually look at size 1 and size 2 in more detail in a moment. But you can kind of see the damage ranges are actually not that different. In general, damage goes up with size as far as missiles go, but you can kind of notice that you don't really double the damage of a size 1 missile until you get to a size 4 missile, which means that the damage dealt is actually much closer together amongst sizes. They're not that separated. Size 1's going to put out, looks like, so that's about 26 to 29, so it's going to put about 2750 plus or minus 150 points. 2 is 35 to 39, so it's going to put out 37 plus or minus 2. Size 3 actually dips down into the size 2 category. So size 2 and size 3 missiles, is there really a difference? And there's a little bit on the top end. There's 600 points available there, or 800 points available there on the top end. And then, even in size 4, you're only up at 5,000 to 5,800. So the damage in this patch seems to be a little bit like they all put out a healthy amount of damage, but going bigger doesn't necessarily get you that big of an advantage in the points of damage, particularly when you look at what you give up in the other ones before, and we'll go over this in a minute. The next thing is what's listed in the database as ignite time. I would read that as, I would edit that and call it launch time. So that's the time from pickle, aka when you push the pickle button to shoot it before it comes off the rail. And this is where one of the two big advantages of smaller. So bigger isn't necessarily better. Smaller is actually a lot faster for two reasons. Number one, from push of the button to actual weapon release coming off the jet is only half a second. We go up to size 2 and 3, and it's 1.5 seconds. With one exception, this is a weird outlier, and I'm not 100% sure that that's not a typo on CIG's part in the database. But because all of the other size 2s are 1.54, and there's one single one that's only 0.86. And then again, when you get up to size 4, then all of a sudden it goes back down to half a second. This again, from testing, from having shot a bunch of size 4s, I don't think that half a second is correct. I think it's also 1.54 because it seems to be about a second and a half from push to release. But then, and we'll talk about torpedoes in a minute. Speeds are also not that big of a difference. So you notice that, of course, the larger you get, the slower the missile is, slightly. You get about 1,500 out of a 15, close to 1,600 out of a size 1, but it only drops to about 1,250-ish to just under 1,300 for a size 4. So the speed range, much like the damage, is not that much of a loss, not that big of a deal. So I kind of discount the speed and discount the damage a little bit as far as the size. This launch time, and then the other one is this min range. In a close-in dogfight, which is what Star Citizen was designed for. I mean, they edit out the model outside of, you can no longer can see the ship outside of about 3,000 meters visually on the screen. and you're not even getting sensor contacts out much past about 5,000 meters. So this min range is a huge player, particularly if people have been out kill trading and dueling for the Vandal Mask, have come to figure this out pretty quick. So this is sort of the big thing I'm looking at right now with Missiles in 311 is what's that min range? That min range. So the size 1's min range is only 1 kilometer, which is, you can see that in a, you can easily see that during a dogfight. Now, when we look at the actual size 1's, we're going to be looking at min range, and we're going to be looking at acquisition time. How fast, when you command it, will it get a lock so that you can then shoot it and get in the air? So that lock time plus that ignite time is very important for how, and that min range, all three of those will play into how fast can you get a weapon in the air on that person, versus a size 4. About the only thing that's good for is trying to keep people from running away, because they got to get out to 2,500 meters before you can even start locking. And oh, by the way, the lock time is long. And oh, by the way, if that launch, if my suspicions are correct that this is a misprint and it's actually 1.54 as it feels like in the game, then by the time somebody gets out to 2,500 meters running away from you, by the time you get it locked and launched, they're probably out of sensor range, and you're not going to get the bird in the air anyway. Max ranges are all much longer than that, probably not worthy even talking about. Basically, if you can see them on sensors, they're in range is about the way it is, so 10,000 meters for size 1 and 2, up to 20,000 meters for a size 4. So that's for missiles. If you're one of those folks that's that, and for those who don't go out and shoot torps all the time, why you've seen a lot more retaliators and eclipses running around out shooting torps should be pretty obvious as you've been looking ahead while I've been blabberizing at you. Notice that all the torps lock on, their min range is only 1,000 meters. So they can lock a size 9 on you just outside of 1,000. Now it has a long lock time, but their launch time is only half a second. And they're all 3 sizes are like that. So they are slower missiles. As you can see, as you get larger, the size 9s aren't even 1,000, don't even fly at 1 kilometer per second. And that's probably why they've been talking about, capital ships will be able to hopefully shoot them down, because you can probably hit that target. But the fact that they're all, you can shoot a size 9 torp at effectively what I would call point blank range, if you can hold them in the locking cone long enough to get them to get it to lock. And oh, by the way, look at that damage. Depending on which of the 3 size 9 torps you choose, 72,000 damage. It's a one-shot kill on most fighters. Okay, so that's kind of so I've actually, while I've been doing this Vandal Mask dueling stuff, I've actually changed my previous philosophy was get the biggest missile you can back in the day when that was kind of the only thing that really mattered. But that's not the way it is anymore. This system now warrants a little bit of a look. I've actually dialed down, and I'm actually running pretty much nothing but size 1 and size 2s, depending on what I'm trying to do, because of that min range and the speed at which you can get it off the rail, because this much damage going out is better than this much damage that never gets off your launcher, because you can't shoot it. So missile selection in general, when you're thinking about what you're going to put on the bird before you even go fly, in general, the bigger the boom, the longer the quote lock, which I just kind of got done beating that dead horse, that as you go up in size, the longer it takes you to get those things locked. And oh, by the way, the farther out that min range is, so you end up not being able to use them in a lot of situations. This will hopefully, I imagine those numbers are absolutely going to get tweaked. They'd have to, because those min ranges are a little bit too much. They're a little bit too far out, even the size 1s. Obviously, I can't use any real life numbers because all of those numbers are classified. But let me just say, modern day missiles, you can shoot a lot closer than 1,000 meters. Okay, so quick discussion about the size 1 and size 2 missiles and kind of what my recommendations are. This is all just screenshots off of Urkel Games DPS calculator, which I'm a huge fan of. Hardpoint.io is another great one that will give you the same information. I just like gray versus white, so I kind of hang out over at DPS Calc for this kind of stuff. When you go looking at this, you're going to see one up there that says the Venom rocket. It's the top one, as I have. I sorted this list by ascending damage, just to put it in something of an order. So the Venom Rocket you actually cannot buy because it is a subcomponent of the Rattler 2, and the Rattler 2 is a cluster missile. It's the only cluster missile in the game. Probably it was their test bed for can you do cluster weapons, which is pretty cool. So the Venom Rocket, just kind of ignore that line because that's not something you can like go and buy. You can buy the Rattler, which has the Venom Rockets within it. Okay, so we're really only looking at those 5 missiles: the Marksman 1, Pioneer 1, Task Force 1, Arrow 1, and the Spark 1. The Arrow 1 being Vandal, or Asperia actually is making a copy of it, because I believe that the quote-unquote Vandal replica missiles are actually now available, because otherwise when you shot them off of your like your blade or your scythe, you wouldn't be able to restock. So because that was actually a problem for a while. All right, so like I said, you can see the ascending amount of damage from 2592 to 2924. Lock, min range and max ranges are all based on size, but that lock time right here is where this, you should basically be looking, and you'll notice that you might go, well, I just want the one that does the biggest damage. Okay, so that would bring you to the Spark 1, which is does 2924 for a size 1 missile, if that's all you were able to carry as size 1s. But the problem is that's a 1.314 second lock time plus a 0.52 second ignite time from from pushing the button to getting it off the rail. So that's darn near 2 seconds. That's 1 3/4 seconds, 1.8 seconds of wait time, that you'd have to get that in. Whereas if you just go down just a little bit of damage, you go down, what is that? 8? You go down 8 points of damage, you get a lock time that's only 0.6 of a second long, followed by a 0.5 second ignite time. So that's 1.1. Where in a dogfight that can count. So now, if you can't get your hands on arrows, then Task Force is also a very good replacement, shaving off a few fractions of a second from being able to lock and shoot on a guy. So that's kind of where I would go if I'm going to go down to a size 1. Would be one of those two, either the Task Force or the Arrow, if you can get your hands on the Arrow. All right, for size 2, similar thought process. There's the Rattler, and it says, hey, it's cluster ammo is the Venom Rocket, so that's why over on size 1, I told you to disregard it. If you look over on that one, it says that the Venom Rocket does 90 points of damage, and here the Rattler has 7 of those Venom Rockets in it. So that 7 times 90 gives you 630 points of damage, but then it tells you the total damage is 3546. The reason is because the Rattler missile itself is also a weapon coming in on you. So it gets like 3/4 of the way to the target, then spits out 7 miniature cluster munitions as well to come in on you and spread damage out. So that's why that one's an odd duck. Okay, lock time for these guys. And again, I have this in ascending damage as far as the sort. So again, you'll notice that there's some interesting lock times on here. Obviously, the cross-section missiles take the longest. But you come up here towards like the Strike Force of the Dominator, you're looking at 2.4 or 1.7 seconds to lock. Whereas if you kind of take a small reduction in damage, you can get a speed up, particularly if you go after that Rattler. That Rattler locks in 1.26 seconds and then comes off the rail in 0.86. So just about 2 seconds for you to go from commanding the lock. If you're right on the game, and right the second it locks up, you mash down on the pickle button. It's 2 seconds in a perfect world at only 1,500 meters min range. So you might be able to see that in a dogfight. The guy tries to slide back away from you. If he slides back too far, maybe you aft strafe a little bit to get that last couple of meters to get him outside of 1,500. Dink, and if he's not fast and realize what you're doing, whap, you give him a Rattler right in the face. If you can't get your hands on the Rattler, then the Ignite, actually you go back up in a little bit of damage, about 150 in damage, and you only have to add 1/3 of a second in lock time, but you do go up to, so it actually costs you almost a full second overall. You go from about 2 seconds to about 3 seconds total when you add it all up. So that's my logic for why you may want to look at actually going with smaller weapons that you can actually shoot at people versus larger weapons that you'll never get to shoot at them because you're never gonna get outside that min range in a fight. Choice is yours. All right, so missile employment itself. Okay, so you've decided on the missiles and why. So how do you actually employ them? The first one you remember is to get your desired target that you want to shoot at as your sensor target of interest, aka the one that you have your radar quote unquote locked to. So I would suggest that you throw that phrase target of interest or sensor target of interest into your vocabulary bag of tricks, because that's actual the way the industry speaks of it. Video games be damned. So that when you say that, that means the guy I'm locked to, but doesn't necessarily mean a missile lock. But to get a missile onto that guy, you first have to have hit your desired target as that sensor target of interest, and then you command the lock. If you're using default controls with a keyboard and mouse, it's a short click on the middle mouse button. If you're flying with sticks and stuff like that, then I can't guess where you have remapped it to, because you will have had to remap it. Okay, once it does its acquisition and chimes in as locked, then a long click hold of the same middle mouse button, same one you used to acquire is the one you use to launch. Short click acquires, long click launches it, sends it on its way. That's it. It's a video game. It's not that hard to employ a missile, as long as you are outside of min range and inside of max range, and they are within the front, basically within the HUD. All right, so how about we counter these bad boys? Well, the onboard countermeasures, OBCM is the industry term for that, onboard countermeasures, for the generic term of chaff and flare. They've actually changed the methodology of how this is done. They went away from the term chaff and flare, and went to noise field and decoy, but then they put chaff and flare, the names, back in on the HUD. So you'll still see chaff and flare, but you need to understand that flare means decoy and chaff means noise field. And we'll talk and demonstrate some of that here in a minute. So your onboard countermeasures, I just told you about that, the two types, deploy a noise field and deploy a decoy. Decoys you'll have a lot of. Went out in the Vanguard. You'll see in the video, went out in the Vanguard to capture the video, and we had 48 decoys and 5 noise fields. Now, it sounds like a whole lot of decoys, but you also spit 3 of those decoys out for every push of the button, whereas noise field is a one push, one noise field deployment. So you have 5 in the Vanguard. You have 5 noise field. 5 times you can deploy a noise field, and what is that? 16 times 3, 48 to use up 48 decoys, because you're going to spit 3 out every time you hit the button. The good news is that both types work on all missile guidance systems. They work to varying degrees. Decoys will work better against some, and noise fields will work better against others, but they all have some amount of effectiveness against all types. That's why they kind of wanted to go away from chaff and flare specifics to a more generic term. I think, and I don't have, I think I can remember reading it, but I could not find when I went back to look for it, I could not find where I had read it. But I think I had read somewhere on Spectrum in one of the forums, one of the devs had said they're basically planning on naming the decoys flare. Just like they have the Ignite 2 missile and the Rattler 2 missiles and stuff like that. They're going to name the decoys flare. So flare is a name, and they're going to name the noise field bundle that you shoot out. They're going to name that chaff, so that chaff and flare, because that's basically how chaff works. It makes a big field of radio reflected radar noise, so that the radar can't pick out where the jet is and what's just a big field of static feedback. And flares are basically a decoy. They're just a hot spot that goes flying away from the jet, and hopefully the missile mistakes that for the jet and goes after it. For IR missiles, they said, okay, no, the decoy it gives off IR, it gives off EM, and it's able to spoof cross section missiles all the same, and we'll just name it flare. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting lore way of getting around your change. That works. And then, oh, by the way, chaff and flare. It works on sensors too now. Glancing over at the chat here, I see Oendrus, and welcome, by the way. How do stealth components affect lock-on times? They don't affect lock-on times because that's with the missile, but they will affect detect ranges. I can attest to this. I had a few minutes and logged in at Grimhex, jumped in the Gladius to go out and see if anybody wanted to kill trade. Started talking in global chat. Two guys were like, yeah, I'd like to, but I'm on the other side of the system. We got to get over there first. Okay, no problem. I'll wait for you guys. In the meantime, Saber, some dude in a Saber came out and started messing around with me. Had no sensor contact on him until he locked his radar on me. So the first inkling I had that he was there, I thought I was all by myself around Grimhex just hanging out. I get a radar lock out of the blue, and then I get a missile lock and a missile launch warning right on me with no sensor contacts at all. So I'm basically guessing where this missile is coming at me from. Luckily, he wasn't very good. I mean, he was good at the stealth game because he was definitely playing it. He was playing a lot of cat and mouse. But by the time I would get the first sensor contact I would get on him would be basically when he was starting to open up guns at me. He wasn't very good because, he had me out, a Saber outguns a Gladius considerably, and he has 3 shield generators. But he retreated. We sat here in a dogfight for 30 minutes. Every time I'd get him down and get him just about, I'd get his shields knocked down and start doing damage to the hull directly, he would run away. And it would be amazing at how fast I would lose radar locks on him and how fast, and like I said, he'd throw a little chaff or flare, poop, and it would break my lock, and then he'd be disappeared again. Now I would just go like, oh, okay, he's coming back, and I would just go over and hug an asteroid. So he was wasting missiles constantly because I'd basically go almost land on an asteroid, just going like, all right. But after half an hour of this, of him running away every time he'd start losing, or every time he had basically just to prevent me from popping him, getting him to pop, then after that I was like, I'm out of time. I got to go, dude. See ya. And, but by the way, you were losing to a Gladius. So, go hit the arena commander some because you need some work. But as far as so that's how stealth will deny a lot of your missiles, because he can get your system to drop lock before you've, even if you're in the middle of doing a missile lock, if he can get your ship to drop lock on him, which they can do, if he's playing the stealth game right, then, your missiles are just going to end up laying on the rail. But it does not affect their lock times or their ranges. It'll only affect whether or not you can get the lock on them because of whether or not your sensors can see them. Good question, man. Good question. Okay. Back on task. So, yep. That's the onboard characteristics. All right. So the noise field countermeasure basically works like this. And like I said, you'll see it in the video. The video is only like 2 minutes long, 2.5 minutes, I think. Because it's just a little bunch of vignettes, some snapshots that we took. Okay, so aka chaff, for meaning noise filter. So what happens is when you deploy a noise field, and I would suggest you only mash that button one at a time. Be very judicious about it because you're only going to have a couple. It spits out basically a cluster countermeasure, a cluster munition. It spits this thing out. It goes low and aft of the jet, and then it pops and spreads the clusters out. And then those all pop individually and throw chaff all over the place to make a chaff cloud. So it goes out, it pops, and makes all these like sub-munitions, if you will, that go different directions. And it sounds, in your headset, it'll sound like fireworks. It'll pop out, it'll sound like, there'll be an initial sort of boom, and then there will be a whole bunch of pops, like you've heard a million times at big fireworks show. It'll go boom, 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 and then you'll just see a bunch of what looks like dust and dirt, almost like like snowflakes or flakes of ash, because it's all dark gray, will go floating around your ship. And it creates a whole cloud of reflectivity that will mask your IR signature, your EM signature, and hopefully, and your cross section as well, and hopefully spoof the missile. So the missile just can't figure out. It's like, I saw the ship. Now I just see this big area that's just all the same heat, and it's all the same electromagnetic reflectivity, and it's all the same. I don't see the visual cross section anymore. The decoy comes out similarly, but it's how it spoofs the missile is different. Instead of just making the missile lose you in the noise, instead you spit it out and it comes out. They come out in three, so every one press of the button will shoot three of them out. They come out low and aft of the jet, boom, 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 and they actually have some velocity down and away. So if you are putting positive G, as in pitch up, to maneuver, and I should always suggest you maneuver whenever you deploy countermeasures. Always maneuver with it. Don't just hit them. If you sit still and you deploy countermeasures, you're probably going to get hit by the missile anyway. So you gotta move. You gotta dodge as well as throw the countermeasures. So those flares go away from the jet, and if they do their job as you maneuver away, the missile bites off on those flares and it turns and tries to follow them. But ultimately, the best countermeasure is to actually employ both in concert, which obviously you're going to use more of the countermeasures because you're going to use it with just one button push for flare and one button push for chaff. You're going to use one of your chaff bundles and three of your flares, so you're using more, but that will create this a noise field for you to mask your craft with, and decoys going away to spoof off the missile. And then with maneuver, you should probably avoid that hit with the missile. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And obviously in our training programs, when we go out and fly it, you'll get plenty of chances for us to actually make you practice it. All right, so the HUD symbology. How is the HUD? The HUD's gone through a lot of changes with its conversion over to building blocks. It's actually really good, I think. It's gotten a lot better. The big things right now that is now available in 3.11 is, first off, you got your missile type, name, and quantity is down in the lower right corner. So obviously here I've got Raptor 4s. How many of them? I have 4 of them. So the number is your quantity, and obviously the Roman numeral after it is just the size of the weapon. So Raptor 4 is a size 4 missile. And then they are EM guided because it has lightning bolt. Over in the lower left corner is you've got your onboard countermeasures type and quantity. So you've got 48 flares and 5 chaff, because this is a snapshot of the HUD out of the Vanguard Harbinger, one of my favorites. So as you can see, you got quite a number of flares and not a whole lot of chaff. So you kind of need to be judicious about what you're doing and when and where and why. Okay, so what if somebody shoots at you? What's the symbology you get? You get an audio tone as well, but right down beneath your gun cross, near the bottom of your head and in between these two, it'll say inbound missile. It will show you the symbol for which guidance type that it is. You will get a circle around it that will start full. Underneath it, we will get a number that is the number of missiles that your system has detected inbound. And then that circle will start counting down counterclockwise as a countdown to impact. It works fairly well. By the time that circle goes away, it's usually not impact. It's usually the missile is within 300 meters, is what I've kind of noticed. So as you can see here in this example, I've got a cross-section missile locked onto me, just one. It's coming in, and it's about 75-ish% of the way from launch to impact. And you guys will notice all of this in the video, because we're just basically, Olermir's just shooting me with missiles one at a time, over and over again. Size 1's letting them splash on the shields, and then let my shields come back, and then shoot the next one so that we could film it. Okay, and that's... So I will Alt-Tab over to the vidya. Where is the vidya? There we go. Okay. So we actually did 4 missile shots of each, but, he was size 2s, not size 1s. Sorry, my bad. I edited it down, so I'm only showing 2 of each missile shot. So you'll see the first 2 will be cross section, the middle 2 will be IR, and the last 2 will be EM. And then I show what it looks like both inside and out when you shoot off flares, and then when you shoot off chaff, and that's the whole 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I think. So, okay. There's no sound to it, so I'll just talk to it. So, of course, that's the HUD that you're looking at. So there is a missile coming in. Olermir is at my right, 3 o'clock, at about 3 kilometers, I think. And one of the things to notice down in the radar, you'll notice that once the missile got within that 300 meter, that innermost 300 meter ring, you notice that I got a little red cross that actually shows the missile flying in. Right there. Okay. Now, that's interesting that they're actually showing that your radar is actually seeing the missile in the last moments of flight. I think it needs to be expanded out farther because that last 300 meters is, okay, great, you showed me the cross. It's too close for me to do anything about. We don't have the thrust anymore for us to be able to dodge a missile when it's only 300 meters away. If you're going to show that to me, you need to have it start at least out at a kilometer. And there was the heat seekers, and now we go into the radar guided, the EM. Same thing. Poof. You will notice in there a couple of times we had some server instability where you saw the countdown timer there sort of get to like 25% and then jump back up to 50% and then go back down again. Like right there, you saw it hesitate a couple of times. So server stability obviously affects this a little bit, but it's better, definitely way better than it was. Okay, so now looking down on the lower left for flare, you see the flares just counted down 3, and then you saw the flash in the cockpit. And then this is what it looks like from outside. So hit it right about here, and they shoot down and away, behind and away from the spacecraft. And then same thing for chaff. Obviously inside, you're just going to see your chaff counter. You'll hear it deploy. So there the chaff counter goes down. You'll hear it go pa-pa-bum, pa-pa-pa-bum, pa-bum. And then you see all of this like flakes of ash or gray snow flakes floating out around you. That's the actual chaff spreading itself out to get the right distance apart so that it reflects energy properly. This is what it looks like from the outside. So, boom. It goes out as a single cluster munition, pops into the small clusters, and then they all burst to throw it everywhere. And this one is the one that sounds like fireworks. You like the popcorn kind of fireworks. Okay. I will tap dance for a few seconds to see if there's any more questions.
Yeah, I have a question.
Absolutely. What you got?
So a two-part one, actually. First off, is there a way to switch between size 1 and 2 missiles on a ship? And second of all, they basically have like the AIM-7 equivalent, the AIM-9 equivalent, and then the AIM-120 equivalent in-game. Is any missile type better than the others?
Okay. So so I'll answer each of them individually. So is there a way to switch between missile types? That is coming. That's what missile operator mode, when it was on the roadmap. I'll use a dirty word. Yeah, roadmap. When that card was on the roadmap, that's what they were developing. They obviously had to push it off for other priorities. So the answer is no, not yet, but it's coming. So like many, many other things in Star Citizen. Not yet, but it's coming. Yeah. The second one, is there a difference in guidance type, or is there, I'm sorry, remind me what the second part of your question was is one guidance type better than another?
Correct. It just seems like they implemented the equivalent to the AIM-7 via electromagnetic, the AIM-9 via infrared, and then the AIM-120 cross-section. And I mean, the AIM-120 is the most modern-day missile that we have that uses cross-section guidance, basically. So is that one the best in-game, that missile type?
Fighter pilot answer number one: it depends. The short answer is not necessarily. They all have their pluses and minuses, and none of them are really, there's not one end all be all. This is the best. The IR missiles lock the fastest, but they're also, I think, the most easily decoyed. Cross-section missiles lock the slowest, but they're the hardest to defeat the seeker. So you could probably defeat an IR missile with just flares. You could probably defeat a EM missile with just noise. But a CS missile, you're probably going to have to do both, is kind of the way I envision it. I don't have access into the numbers in the code to be able to know if there's any truth in that statement. But I mean, that's just kind of how video games work, particularly. And these guys have talked about balance so many times that, the balanced triangle. Okay, so they have 3 guidance types. Okay, great. That means that, one's going to be really fast but easily defeatable. One's going to be really slow but hard to defeat. And the other middle one's going to be a middle ground. There's my longer answer. Don't ask me that in real life about real life stuff, because I can't talk about that. But, anyone else? Any other questions? Yeah, Olermir is saying that the flares actually pop up as targets on your sensors. Yes, they do. Yeah, if you're close enough, they tend to have a soft yellow hue to tell you that it's a flare and not a ship. Yes, I specifically did not talk about warheads. These missiles also have 2 different types of warheads. If you were looking at the size 1 and size 2 screenshot charts, that they also had that listed as whether they were strike or proximity. That is the warhead. Whether or not if it says strike, then the missile's got to hit you, like no kidding, spear you to detonate. And a prox warhead only has to get close enough. It'll fly itself up close and then blow itself up and try to catch you in the frag. Real life is like that. Actually, real life is, I don't know of any missile that's either or in the modern era. Pretty much all missiles have both functionalities in them. They all have a prox fuse and they all have a crush fuse in them too. So, because in real life, an air-to-air missile successfully spearing an aircraft out of midair is very, 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 very rare, very, very hard to do. So air-to-air missile kills is the missile flies itself close enough to you to go, yep, that's good enough, and then it blows itself up and just frags your airplane out of the capability to continue flying. So, but if it does happen to get lucky, and of all the air-to-air missiles that we have data on, the AIM-9 is the best for in test, shooting drones. The AIM-9 is the one that has the most, no kidding, speared the airplane and blew up. And that's only like 15% of the shots. So 85% of the time the missile is blowing itself up next to you. AIM-7, AIM-120, even less than that. They are almost always the prox fuse that gets you. That gets you. They almost never actually spear the airplane. That's long, history of test records, which is just kind of a cool factoid. See, change things. CS missiles can only be broken via dodging. Okay, so Olermir is quoting what I will call old knowledge. In 310 and earlier, cross-section missiles could only be defeated by breaking line of sight. So you had to fly around behind something and put it between you and the missile, which is almost impossible to do with the short ranges and fast flight times of missiles. Now, when they I think it was in the ISC or the Star Citizen Live where they were talking about missiles, they were saying like no cross section is now can be decoyed and noise field. It's affected by decoys and noise field, just like the others, only at different effectiveness levels. They didn't go into more specifics about how effective, but so there's, that's why 310 and earlier cross-section missiles was everybody's favorite. Back before you had things like min ranges, max ranges, everybody was willing to take the long lock-on time, because once they were locked on, the chances of the guy being able to dodge it or defeat it with, it took chaff and flare out of the game. He's like, yeah, don't care. Chaff and flare against all you want. That's no longer the case, as I understand it, based on Star Citizen Live and Inside Star Citizen. Yeah, prox warheads are definitely in this game are probably going to be much more valuable against small, hard maneuvering targets, and strike will be against things that can't get out of the way. So if you're shooting at something bigger, you probably want the strike warhead. The fact that they even have those divvied up into two, just, it insults the fighter pilot in me. So, okay, any other questions? Going once, going twice, going thrice. Okay, let's get to some flying. It's getting late. This wraps up this installment of Academics Foghorn. Hope you found it interesting and helpful. If you have any questions I didn't answer, please feel free to contact me via email, Discord, Spectrum, or the comments section below, or Gilded. And I will answer it to the best of my ability and as fast as I see it. Remember, if you are a member or visitor alike, please remember to hit those follows and subscribe buttons on our social medias as appropriate, and leave us a comment. We actually do read everything and take the feedback to heart, because we're always striving to improve our contact. If you're looking for more information, you can find us on our bespoke website, which is back up and running, by the way, thank God. AuroraRepublic.space, or of course you can find us on Spectrum at robertspaceindustriesl.org/AuroraRep. See you next time. Foghorn signing off, wishing you a very pleasant remainder of your morning, afternoon, evening, and thank you very much for watching. And for the rest of the folks, give me like 3 to 4 minutes to get set up, and we will be right back on stream to go fly in the verse and find something fun to do.